listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889.
The following Community Forum segment is an interview done with New Mexico Governor candidate Deb Haaland. This was held after a campaign event in Carlsbad, New Mexico on February 28th. The interview was conducted by a Carlsbad Current-Argus reporter and a student at Southeast New Mexico College.
Well, yeah, just, wanted to ask you, coming to Southeast New Mexico, a very conservative area, how do you connect with voters in a place like this?
I mean, as I said, I'm running. I'll be running in the Democratic primary. There's Democrats everywhere, all over the state, right? Some people are here because they've had families. Generations of their families have lived here. So I just think Carlsbad or Eddy County is an important place. I came here a lot. I've knocked on doors. I've done canvassing here, and I just think that every single part of New Mexico is important.
Okay. Well, in particular, here in the Permian Basin, oil and gas is kind of the way of life here. You were Interior Secretary, increased royalty rates, that kind of stuff, renewable energy. How do you respond to concerns that, of the industry here in the southeast corner?
Right. So, of course, I also respect every job, right?
Sure.
I understand that everybody has a job, and I'm not ever out to, stop somebody from working or, ruin something that people are working in. I think we can have a cleaner industry. I think we have an obligation to future generations, as I mentioned in my remarks. And I will say that in the work that we did as Interior Secretary, cleaning up those orphan oil and gas wells, it actually, it was a good thing. We cleaned up a lot of pollution around the country, and that was air that our children breathe. So I think that as New Mexicans, all of us care about the air our children breathe, and we should all think about that above all, having a healthy environment for our children to grow up in. So my concerns, of course, stem from that. And I look forward to having more conversations about it.
Sure. Well, Democrats control both the House and Senate and the legislature. They're in session right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, how would you, a lot of Southeast New Mexico lawmakers, mostly Republicans that I talk to, feel like they're constantly playing defense for their region, constantly defending the industry and the economy. Would you plan to work across the aisle?
Of course, yes. That's what I do. I was one of the most bipartisan members of Congress in my 2018 class. That was a real thing. I got a lot, I got a number of pieces of legislation signed into law by Trump, and those were bipartisan pieces of legislation. So I'm open to working with anyone who wants to lift up New Mexico and make it a better place.
So if you're elected, you'll be the first female Native American governor in U.S. history. So how does your heritage shape your approach to leadership and making New Mexico a better place?
So I've had a lot of kids, when I was in Washington, D.C., I had a lot of kids come in to visit me in my office. And one thing that I told them was I never realized that spending time in my grandfather's cornfield would influence a career I have in public service. But I feel like from my earliest times, understanding community, that is important, a family is important. The natural systems here in New Mexico are something that we need to protect. I mentioned in my remarks that climate change is making droughts and wildfires worse. That's a real thing, and I think that we have a proud agricultural tradition here in New Mexico that we need to watch out for, because that's how people make their living. And so I think that, spending those times in my grandfather's field gave me a perspective that we need to take care of the earth, and from that everything stems.
New Mexico has some of the highest poverty rates in the country. What are your strategies to address economic inequality and create more job opportunities?
Absolutely. Poverty is, and as you heard in my remarks, I'm not a stranger to poverty. I struggled raising my child as a single mom. I think part of it is lowering costs, and quite frankly, President Trump hasn't done anything to lower costs. In fact, he's exacerbating these situations by firing so many people. People in New Mexico have lost their jobs as a result of what the president is doing in D.C. That's not okay. I think more than ever, people need to be working, they need to be sending their kids to school, and they need to be able to afford to live. So I think that if they did less firing of people and more digging into how we need to lower costs so that people can afford to live, that would be something that I think would benefit New Mexicans.
You're listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889.